I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie in another podcast, and I have an amazing guest today, Keren Shamay, and I'm going to talk to you a lot more about her in a minute, but let's first talk about Warrior versus Zombie. Success is a journey, not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point and provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life. Entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, really any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and they have a vision that goes generations into the future, and our guest today is no exception. Keren Shamay is a true warrior. She's a speaker, a teacher, a coach, a consultant, facilitator, author, and energy practitioner. She's born in Israel and moved to the United States when she was in elementary school, and experiences in her youth gave her a really broad understanding of human dynamics and interpersonal communications that she still uses today to coach her clients. Keren began her warrior journey over 20 years ago after discovering energy practices and the massive impact that they have on your life. And as an author, she is internationally published with 2 books that have sold on 4 continents. She's also recognized for her knowledge of corporate culture, energy psychology, crisis intervention, and human resources, which allow her to coach C-suite executives and business owners in human and business performance. Keren specializes in coaching executives through their personal energy journey, enabling them to increase their impact and skyrocket their company's success. Keren Shamay, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are you doing today?
I am doing great today. Thanks, Dave. I'm excited to be here. I heard Barbara's podcast last week, and I love PAX Women. I happen to be one, so I'm giving her a little shout out here. I don't know how normal that is, but I like giving people that I respect a shout out. So with me right now, I am straddling a couple of different worlds. I work with executives on helping them with human resources and taking amazing care of their people. And I also have an energy coaching business, but I focus more on interpersonal skills and how you can kind of design your life versus being the Reiki healer. So I'm more on the executive coaching. Let's figure out where your challenges are so that you can make money and advance in the business world. So I think those two tie in really well. And I know that you've mentioned Be Connected. I'm part of that network as well. And I was on the university, one of the teachers teaches you how to do videos. So in the past few weeks, I have started creating videos teaching business owners all about professional employer organizations, one little chunk, bite-sized chunk at a time. And I'm having a lot of fun with the editing of that and throwing in the music, doing all the happy stuff that goes around me talking. It gives me a nice creative outlet. And I think finally, my biggest excitement at the moment is I've decided that I am going to come out of the closet fully with my energy business and revamp my website and actually start going after clients instead of just sitting in the background and advertising a little bit here and there and hoping for word of mouth. So all of that is coming to kind of a head at the end of 2020. I think I can honestly say this has been the best year of my life. And I know that doesn't resonate with a lot of people, but as an introvert, not having to people and all sorts of things coming together at the end and having energy for the creativity that I want to do, it's all turned into a phenomenal year.
Wow. So that's pretty cool. So a couple of questions. One is, what the heck is a PAX girl?
So there is a company out of California that puts on seminars, and the idea is intergender communication skills. And this company was specifically targeted towards women to learn how to get along better with men, rather than teaching men how to get along better with women. And I didn't realize the huge differences that there are between men and women in masculine and feminine energy. 4 completely different distinctions. I'm happy to teach you. Barbara is a master at this. But there are a lot of miscommunications that happen from not understanding the differences. So this company puts on a lot of different seminars, and I went through their entire curriculum, and it helped, we'll just call it, it helped with my intergender communications and made my life so much smoother, being able to communicate with men in a way that's effective rather than constantly hitting my head against a wall because I think they should be hearing one thing when they're hearing something completely different just because of how our brains are wired.
Wow. Actually, that's I'm glad you brought that up because it's very timely. And I know that Barbara talked about it, but we talked about a lot of things. But on the check-in, one of the things that I had read recently was there's a huge movement going on because there's been a movement to basically attack men or masculinity from the political arena, trying to divide men and women. And I think probably now more than ever, the understanding of the fact that it's not because either side is bad or good or doesn't understand. It can be as basic as just how we communicate and how we process information. And that doesn't mean that we weren't meant to be together or work together. It just means that we need to invest a little time in educating. So that's awesome. And it's awesome to hear that you've actually seized the opportunity during the lockdown quarantine to exercise your lack of peopling and focusing it in on your business. But that is actually not weird. It's funny because I started this podcast in February as coronavirus was just kind of something we were talking about. And the check-in segments have all been some way related to the shutdown or this time that we're in, 2020, that's never happened before, at least in this way. And it's amazing to me, every warrior I've had has said, yeah, but it's not so bad. I've actually, they're all because they're warriors. Because see, warriors don't look at things like a pandemic or a government lockdown on our lives, even though those are challenges. They're not going to accept those as in the way and stop. They just see them as on the way and they move around them in some form. And that's what you just said you did, which to me is very consistent. It may be different in your mind and what maybe even in some circles, but for sure the people we have on Warrior versus Zombie, they always see these big obstacles or big changes as big opportunities and not a reason to cry and shut down, I guess. So I think that's also fascinating. Well, thanks for helping me understand what a PAX girl was.
I actually left out the most critical piece. The name of this company is PAX, and that's why PAX, we're PAX girls or PAX women, if you want to be. So that's where it comes from.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so what else it sounds like you got a lot of stuff going. You're looking great. You're thriving here through this, which is great to see. Anything else in the current situation? We'll talk about, by the way, where you're at and what you're doing, and we'll get a little bit more into some of the things you mentioned in the third segment. But anything else in terms of just dealing with the here and the now that people are dealing with that you're running into?
Well, so because I work with executives at the company level, I'm seeing a lot of the uncertainty that's coming out and reading all of the articles from the Harvard Business Review and other journals about how the uncertainty around their people strategy, because most things that keep business owners awake have to do with their people. If it wasn't for the employees, they would sleep really well at night. So my focus right now is to figure out the most effective way to help them so that they can help their employees. Because when you've got happy employees, people are healthier, they want to come to work, they participate, and you as a business owner thrive. So that's kind of been my focus most recently.
Yeah, and that's actually very real and I work with a lot of executives as well as business owners, and you're exactly right. That is a huge top of mind issue because the business itself has changed in a lot of cases, or how you conduct it. And so how do you do that? How do you take care of the people that are hanging in there with you? How do you bring in new people that have, since some people have bailed or moved on for whatever reason? And how do you deal with people that are not showing up to an office every day? All those things can be challenging and a struggle. So I can surely see where that would occupy a lot of your time. And it's probably also hard to get into a room or into the offices with some of those executives as well, I would imagine. So, well, let's do this. I think this was a good check-in, and I think I really want to get into hearing and letting our audience hear your story in this next segment. But let's take a quick break. Let's listen to a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Keren Shamay and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race.
All right, we're back with Warrior versus Zombie, and what an amazing check-in with Keren Shamay. And before we get started, I want to give thanks to our sponsor, Be Connected, where entrepreneurs connect, and offer an opportunity for our listeners to get in on the ground floor of the premier hub for successful warriors. Be Connected empowers warriors from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, home-based and small business owners, CEOs, founders, really enabling them to connect and collaborate, create a larger impact in the world. Check us out now and learn how you can thrive as we move forward out of the pandemic at beconnected.com. That's BEEKONNECTED.com, and use a special code, MyVisionWarrior. So now we're back to Keren Shamay. And Keren, now I want to hear about your story. I know where you're at. We talked a little bit about how you're dealing with today, and we'll talk a little bit more about where you're going from here. But tell me, how did you get, I know I didn't cover all the story in your introduction. So tell me, how did you get to here?
How did I get to here? So nobody was on the call before we started, but I told Dave, how many does he want? Because I could go on and on and on about zombies. Luckily, I've surpassed all of them. But I think my story initially started right around the time I moved to the United States. I was 6 years old, and several things happened. One, well, we'll just say fat. There's no nice way to say it, because it wasn't just chunky. I was a very, very fat child. And moving to a new country where you don't know the language, and I didn't know how to communicate with people, because it's so much more than words. The communication styles between Israel and the United States are so different. So I didn't have the interpersonal communication skills. I was a very, very fat child, and I was an unhappy child. And very shortly after we moved to the United States, I was also molested by a doctor that my mom took me to. Yeah, he asked me he needed to check me out. And I remember specifically, he told my mom that she should leave the room so I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And we don't need to go into that story, but that happened. And I never really thought about it, but when something like that happens, once I did deal with it, it's always kind of in the back of your head. So I was a fat child who couldn't communicate and had something not good happen. And then my relationship with my mom, it could be a girl thing, it could be my mom, it could be me, but that wasn't well. So I was just unhappy, and wasn't able to really assimilate into this country until many, many years later, as far as being able to speak with people and have them actually hear me communicating beyond the male-female dynamic, just the human-to-human dynamic. And it wasn't until I got into the energy work and I saw what was possible, how it can affect your life and the journey that you go on through that, the things that come up for you to deal with, because you can't progress as a human, and no matter how you look at it. As a human, you can't progress until you deal with the challenges that you have. And throughout my life, I had a repeating problem. It just kept coming up over and over and over again. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I actually healed the relationship. For me specifically, it was with my mom. And that got completely cleaned up, that this situation just disappeared out of my life. It was no longer an issue. I could see it from across the room. I could see it if someone was trying to interact with me on that level, but it couldn't enter my reality anymore. So I learned that anything that you have in your life that comes back over and over and over again, there's a really good chance it ties back to a relationship that you have with someone. They may have passed, but it ties back to a personal connection. And until you deal with that thing will keep coming back. The weight, I think 2 to 3 years ago, I finally learned a lot of things about weight and the idea that eat less, move more is completely ridiculous and doesn't work and never has worked. And I learned what actually does work. So that was taken care of. I went from a body that was about 300 pounds to, I don't know what I weigh. I refuse to weigh myself on principle, but I think I'm at a size 10 right now, for reference, anybody who's listening and cares about those numbers. Let's see, as far as my energy journey, anybody who knows about energy work and the journey that you need to go through, that was big, and that could take up 5 hours on its own. So I actually wrote a book about this. It's on Amazon, it's on Kindle. If you care about that, you can go read that book. All the information's in there. It's called You Want to Be Psychic? Hang On Tight. That'll cover everything. And I've heard from many people that it's spot on. So that was my journey with that. And I think the final piece is when I stopped being a victim. I remember clearly the situation where I had to take personal responsibility and accountability for my actions. I had been mistreating people for a while, and I had to stand up in front of a room full of almost strangers and apologize for the way I had been speaking to them. And that was the first part of me moving into being empowered. Because when you can stand up in a room full of, I think it was 30 people who are not happy with you, and just own the fact that you have been a jerk and they didn't deserve it and it wasn't their fault, and deal with that does something. It does something to your soul. And then afterwards, having them come up and say, I would never have had the courage to do that, so thank you. It shifted me, and I started looking at everywhere something that didn't work came up. What was my part in it? There's always two parts. I don't care who you are, you did something. And if you can own that part of it, your empowerment level goes so high, because you know if you can fix it in the future, it won't happen. And if you can't fix it, then whatever that relationship, whatever that situation is, it was unfixable. So that's a very long way around the short list of the zombies that I've overcome.
Wow. Well, those are a lot of zombies, and I can tell the audience, I can see Keren, she's not fat anymore, so I don't know what she weighs. I don't have a scale, but I can tell you she's definitely overcome that one. I can also tell you that she is, even though she's an introvert, she's very much able to stand in front of groups and communicate, and she just did an awesome job of that. And I'm always amazed at the challenges that we go through, but it sounds like learning that we all have challenges, and success as an entrepreneur, success as a human being is about overcoming the things that we have to overcome in our lives. And we all have maybe different things, but if we just allow ourselves to use the fact that we were experiencing that as a victim as an excuse to not move forward, that can be one of the biggest zombies that we all have to overcome. So you've truly highlighted that in your own journey. So as your journey is today, you mentioned, and we'll talk about this in the next segment. We'll take a break here, we'll talk more in the next segment. So right now, today, your focus is on both helping executives, and they're working with people, which obviously the energy and other things that you've talked about, but that's kind of where you're at today. Are we to that point in your story?
That's it's about half and half. I'm still kind of 50-50, looking at the individual and looking at the organization and how can you streamline it and maybe bring in an infrastructure that you don't have. Because you as a leader, your energy is one thing and how you control yourself is one thing. But if you don't have the right infrastructure set up within your company, then no amount of energy work is going to help. The 3D reality has to be handled as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's do this. I think we've reached a great point in this segment to just land the plane, as I say, and let's move on to the third segment where we can really talk about some of the things that you're doing today, why you're doing them, the value you provide, and if anything were possible, where we'd go from there. But let's take a quick break again, listen to a little more of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Keren Shamay and Warrior versus Zombie.
How many people know your name? One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny.
All right, we're back again with Warrior versus Zombie, and now we're here to the present. We've heard Keren's story. In her check-in, we kind of got some sense of some of the things that she was involved with today. But I'm really fascinated and really want to hear about the things that you're doing today, why you're doing what you're doing. How did you connect the dots between your story and some of the things we were talking about in the check-in, and then what kind of value do you see yourself uniquely providing to those people that you're able to serve? And then, if anything were possible, what kind of impact? What would the future look like for Keren Shamay?
So my brain is kind of jumping between HR, energy work, HR, energy work. So I'll start with the human resources. For that, I work with a company called Insperity, and they do HR outsourcing. But at a really high level, I give executives sleep insurance. I give them the hard infrastructure that they need in order to take really good care of their employees. So if it's a 10-person company, they can look like Google or Yahoo or IBM and have the risk mitigated and the long-term costs contained, just like those big companies do. And I fell into that because I have gone through many, many very dysfunctional corporate jobs. And I have always thought there has to be a better way. There has to be a way for an executive who truly cares about their company and their people to create a culture and a situation where the employees are happy and give the discretional effort and come to work early and want to stay late because they're treated so well. And when I found Insperity, I thought, okay, well, this is a company that actually, not only do they provide that to their clients, but the internal culture that it reflects it. And so because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid myself, I have no problem in saying, no, it's really blue. Seriously, I'm drinking the same Kool-Aid that you're looking at. I don't have to make up the words. And my clients, I've seen their organizations transform and grow and become top employers in their industry because we've put this infrastructure in place, and the owner now has sleep insurance. So I'm helping as far as the high-level executives. They can sleep at night. They can go home before 9 p.m. because things are taken care of, and they're not awake at 2 a.m. worrying. And as far as the executive energy coaching, I fell into the energy world. And I know this might be a taboo statement, but what I realized was a lot of energy people, they're just kind of weird. They can't really communicate effectively on a level that executives and high-powered people can. There are some absolutely who can, but for the most part, the Reiki healers and everybody else, the communication skills and the energy level isn't there. I have always been able to connect with the high-powered people and have normal conversations with them. And what I've seen, not just through energy work, but energy psychology, some of you may have heard of EFT or tapping and other things that, and crisis intervention, my training with that, all of those combine to be able to help teams effectively resolve their problems and function at a higher level. And if somebody needs to sit down and meditate in an hour a day, I can coach them through that as well. But if there's a conflict that just isn't being resolved, we can look at that and see, okay, where's the breakdown? So between my study of interpersonal communications and intergender communications and energy psychology and crisis intervention, I can go in and mitigate and those challenges and help them around it. So I at the moment, I'm kind of melding both worlds, and it seems to be working effectively. Now, my goal, if I had it all my way, I would let the HR infrastructure side go and move into the full-on coaching executives into, now I'm very connected with the HR outsourcing company, so it wouldn't fall off of my radar. It just wouldn't be something that I'm offering myself. I could connect them. I could say, you've got these problems, but let me connect you to somebody who can help you with the infrastructure side as well, and just coach the executives and the executive teams and the business owners so that their companies can thrive and they can sleep better at night.
Yeah, actually, I see that it's a term that's probably overused. Some people don't even like to hear it anymore. It's called synergy, but I do see real synergy between the energy healing, the work that you can do with executives, as well as providing the underpinning, if you will, infrastructure to help them not have to worry about how everybody else is doing while they're taking their energy, their focus to a higher level. I actually run into the same exact thing when I was working with especially corporate executives doing the vision discovery and alignment. Oftentimes things that would come out of that were holding them back, holding them away from their vision of what was possible, was the employee issues. Maybe they didn't have they were gaps, what I call gaps, or gaps in what they had in their company that were distracting them, consuming their calendar, and holding them back from moving to that higher plane, that higher energy level, if you want to call it that, or even just pursuing a vision of the future that they had but didn't feel there was enough hours in the day or they had the resources to make that happen. So with that, let me ask you, if anything were possible, you did mention that you were you'd like to shift the balance from maybe 50-50, let's say, to 75-25, some other balance, or 80-20, to be more focused on the executives and the energy, and then, obviously bring in that HR solution. But what would you say beyond this would be your goal if anything were possible?
So if anything were possible, I have amassed quite a large group of resources in the work that I've done in the corporate world. And I would transition over fully to the executive consultation and then bring in whatever one of my resources is needed at the time. Because being able to have the high level view of their vision, knowing what it is that they want to do personally and professionally, and knowing what's available out there, I would want to stick with my consultation and then offer them solutions. And I in my journey have worked with the Rolls Royce of just about every industry. And so when I bring a solution to the table, I'm not bringing Honda or Toyota. The suggestions that I make are, this is the Rolls Royce. I know who Honda and Toyota are as well, if you want to see that option, but this is going to get you where you want the fastest. Let's look at this option. Let's talk to these people. Let's bring these people in. And so it would just be the consultative side of it versus trying to bring in one piece at a time.
That's really good. I mean, I think that again, that is a good trajectory. I can see that because, frankly, not everybody can have that conversation, that alignment, that energy type of discussion with a top executive of a company. And then once those gaps are identified, it can be a follow-on type of opportunity for you. So that makes a whole lot of sense. Well, that's a pretty good vision of the future. Well, let's do this. Let's end this segment, and we'll get a chance to listen to a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright. And when we come back, hang on, audience, because one of the things I want to get from Keren, we've heard a lot of good takeaways and things in her story, in her check-in, and even talking about what she's doing today and where she wants to go. And Keren, I'm going to ask you to share with the audience, if we take away anything from the podcast, what would you have us do when I come back? So with that, we're going to hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright. It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be right back with the final segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Keren Shamay.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, we're back with the Land the Plane segment of Warrior versus Zombie, and it's been an incredible journey so far. But Keren, as I told you before the break, what would you tell our audience would be the key things you would want us to take away from this podcast, if there were anything that we were going to remember?
So in order to not confuse with how to connect with me, I will start with the first one is the videos for business owners about what you should know. Look me up on YouTube. Just search my name. The channel is called PEOs Behind the Scenes. A lot of really good bite-sized nuggets there for you. Educate yourself. And when you're going to partner with someone, I give you good questions to ask. The three main takeaways are, if you have a repeating pattern in your life, no matter what it is, find the relationship in your life that connects to that. It always comes back to some kind of relationship, and figure out how to heal that. And if you don't know how, find someone who can walk you through that fire, and find someone who's gone through that fire, because I don't think that you can get help from someone who hasn't actually had an experience similar to it. It definitely won't be the same, but if someone hasn't done it, they can't coach you on it. The second one is, take your power back and stop being a victim. Anytime your brain goes to, this isn't my fault, or they did this, or them, if it's not a, what is my part in this? That question has to be reframed, because if you can't do that, you will never have your power. You'll never be able to stand in it. And the final one, which I think is so important for everyone, but especially leaders and business owners and anyone who's in charge of others, you have to connect to your own higher power. And I don't call it, I don't care if you call it God. I don't care if you call it the universe. I don't care if you call it Jesus or Buddha or Allah. You have to find something bigger than you, and you need to be able to connect with that, because without that, you have no grounding, you have no guidance, you have no perspective. So I think those are the three most powerful things I can leave you with.
Wow, those are very powerful things. Understanding that repeated actions have a root in things, and we need to do some self-observance, self-awareness, self-analysis, and also the concept of getting help. I mean, coaches need coaches, mentors need mentors, leaders need leaders, people need people. And the other thing that you said that was very powerful is the fact that finding someone who's been on that journey, and maybe they're a little further down the road from you, that can actually advise you. Because if they haven't been on that path, then it's pretty tough for them to help you through it. And that's one of the things that I've learned in my own journey. I had some things negatively happen along my own journey that I couldn't have helped you or anybody else with going through those things had I not gone through them myself, and having learned the skills, if you will, to go through that. And then I love the lack of victimization. And that is a trait of true warriors that are still on their journey, right? That they are doing it. But we all have to be reminded that that sucks. Now what? Kind of like Scott Schilling, who was one of our guests, I think episode 5, and he had just finished writing a book, and that was the title of the book. That sucks. Now what? Because the reality of it is, it's never going to go, like we were talking about in the check-in, it's never going to go perfectly. So that's brilliant. That is really, really, really helpful. I think if anybody comes away taking those 3 things to heart, that will be good. And what we'll do is also, I'll give you a chance in a second to tell me if you got anything else, and then we'll talk about how to get in touch with you.
So one final thing for anybody out there, if you're interested, completely free, if you are weight challenged at all and want some guidance, want some coaching, again, I went from 300 pounds to not, I'm happy to guide you through that. It won't cost you a penny, because I really think the healthier you are and the more information you have to decide, the better. So feel free to get a hold of me for that alone, if for nothing else. I'm definitely available.
Awesome. Well, that's a great offer in addition to anything else you can do. That was just kind of like a side benefit there. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm sure there'll be somebody listening to this and go, hey, I might take her up on that, because there's a lot of us out here challenged with changing our lifestyle. And it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And I know you know that, because we've talked about that a lot of times, right?
Yeah, my advice, I can guarantee you my advice will not include eat less and move more. That is not part of the reality. So I can promise that part.
Right. Well, it is a lifestyle, and whatever you can sustain and becomes part of it and gets you the results. As I always say, weight loss is a byproduct, let's put it that way, of a healthy lifestyle, whatever that means. Okay, well, let's great stuff, Keren. How do we get in touch with you? How does the audience find you after listening to this podcast? What's the best way?
The easiest and fastest way is look up my website, kerenshamay.com, KERENSHAMAY, 2 E's, 2 A's. Just go there. All my contact information is there. The coaching stuff is there. If you care about Insperity and HR, connect with me. We can do that separately, or we can bring that in aside from that website.
Awesome. KerenShamay.com. That's an easy answer, and it's KerenShamay.com. Correct?
Correct.
Good. All right. So, well, I think that's brought us to the end here, and it's been a great journey, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot of warriors out there that will be excited and inspired at the end of this journey with you on this podcast, Keren. But before we close, let me remind you that if you found us on YouTube or a Facebook link or whatever, you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. You can find Warrior versus Zombie anywhere where you would listen regularly to podcasts. And I also want to thank, again, our sponsor, Be Connected, where you can get in on the ground floor of a premier hub for successful warriors, where they empower warriors from all walks of life to connect, to collaborate, and to really create a larger impact in the world, which is what we're all really about as warriors. We really want to make a difference in this world. And that's beeconnected.com. That's BEEKONNECTED.com. So with that, we're going to end it. We'll hear one more round of It's Not the Getting There, Land the Plane with Ricky Jean Wright.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.